The secret to peace in Psalm 71 amid pressure and gossip. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the shift? The conversation slows, the smiles tighten. Someone looks at their phone a little too quickly, and you don't have proof, but you feel it. Something has been said. Something about you. Pressure has a sound. Sometimes it's loud and obvious. Criticism to your face, conflict in your workplace, tension in your family. But other times it's a whisper, a subtle narrative forming in the background, a message you weren't copied on, a comment that was probably harmless but lingers in your mind long after it was spoken. And if we're honest, gossip hurts in a way direct confrontation does not. When someone attacks you openly, at least you know where you stand. But when your name is carried in rooms you're not in, when motives are questioned without your voice present, it can feel like losing control of your own story. What do you do when you can't defend yourself everywhere at once? What do you do when explaining yourself only seems to make things worse? What do you do when the pressure builds, your heart races at night, and you rehearse conversations that may never happen? Most of us react. We draft the perfect response in our heads. We scroll back through messages searching for clues. We call someone to vent. We strategize how to fix our image. We try to protect our reputation. But Psalm 71 invites us into something radically different. It shows us a believer under pressure, misunderstood, spoken against, even told that God has abandoned him, and yet instead of scrambling to defend himself, he runs somewhere else first. He runs to refuge. He runs to God. This is not naive faith. This is not pretending the whispers aren't real. Psalm 71 is raw and honest. My enemies speak against me, he says. They say, God has forsaken him. That is not small talk. That is public pressure. That is character under attack. And yet in the same breath he declares, in you, O Lord, I take refuge. Not in public opinion, not in reputation management, not in revenge, in you. There is a secret here, a secret to peace that does not depend on clearing your name, a peace that does not wait for everyone to understand you, a peace that can exist even while people are still talking. Tonight, I want to talk to you heart to heart, not as someone who has never felt pressure, but as a fellow believer who knows what it's like to lie awake replaying conversations. We are going to step into Psalm 71 together. We're going to discover what it means to choose refuge over reaction, faith over fear, wisdom over panic. Because the truth is this, you cannot control every voice around you, but you can choose where your heart runs when those voices rise. And that choice will determine whether pressure shapes you into anxiety or into unshakable peace. Psalm 71, Refuge in the Midst of Whispers. Let's step directly into the text. In you, O Lord, I take refuge. Let me never be put to shame. In your righteousness, deliver me and rescue me. Incline your ear to me and save me. Be to me a rock of refuge to which I may continually come. Notice the first move. He does not start with the enemies. He starts with God. That is not accidental. That is intentional spiritual strategy. Psalm 71 has no superscription, no clear label of authorship, but it echoes language from Psalm 31, which David wrote during intense distress. Many scholars believe this psalm reflects David in his later years, possibly around the time of Absalom's rebellion. Imagine that. An aging king betrayed by his own son, political rumours swirling, loyalties shifting, his strength no longer what it once was. And in verse 9 he says, "Do not cast me off in the time of old age, forsake me not when my strength is spent." This is not the prayer of a young warrior charging into battle. This is the prayer of a seasoned believer who has learned that strength fades, but God does not. Then comes the pressure. For my enemies speak concerning me. Those who watch for my life consult together and say, God has forsaken him. Pursue and seize him, for there is none to deliver him. That line reveals the deepest sting. It wasn't just personal insult. They were questioning his relationship with God. God has left him. That's spiritual gossip, that's character assassination wrapped in theology. The Hebrew word used earlier for refuge is machaseh. It paints the picture of shelter from a violent storm, protection from wind and driving rain. Not escape from reality, but safety within it. The psalmist is not denying the storm, he is choosing where he stands during it. And then comes one of the most powerful declarations in the chapter. But I will hope continually and will praise you yet more and more. Did you see the shift? They say one thing. But I will, says another. He doesn't argue with them first. He anchors himself first. He goes on, my mouth will tell of your righteous acts, of your deeds of salvation all the day. He replaces the narrative about him with testimony about God. And here's something remarkable. He doesn't immediately ask God to silence the enemies. He asks God to stay near. O God, be not far from me. That is the secret embedded in the scripture itself. The psalmist's primary concern is not reputation restoration, it is relational nearness. He remembers God's faithfulness from youth. Upon you I have leaned from before my birth. This is not emotional optimism, it is historical faith. He builds his present confidence on past evidence, and near the end he looks forward. Even when I am old and grey, O God, do not forsake me, until I proclaim your might to another generation. Pressure did not shrink his vision, it expanded it. The structure of the psalm moves from lament to declaration to remembrance to future mission. That pattern matters. He pours out his distress, declares trust, recalls faithfulness, and reorients toward purpose. He does not pretend the whispers aren't real. He narrates them to God, and then he narrates God back to his own soul. Peace in Psalm 71 is not passive, it is disciplined. The word continually appears more than once. Hope is not a mood here, it is a decision repeated. The psalmist understood something we must learn. If you do not choose what fills your mouth, pressure will fill it for you. Complaints will overflow, defensive speeches will dominate, anxiety will become your soundtrack. But he chose differently. They say, but I will. That contrast is the hinge of the entire psalm. Why it matters, the spiritual psychology of pressure. Now let's talk about why this matters for you and me today. When gossip circulates, something happens internally. Even if you don't respond publicly, you respond privately. Your mind starts replaying scenarios. Your heart rate increases when certain names appear on your phone. You begin managing perception instead of cultivating peace. Pressure creates a temptation. Defend your image at all costs. But here's the problem. When you obsess over defending yourself, you give the loudest voice in your life to your accuser. Psalm 71 shows us a different psychology. The psalmist does not deny the threat. He acknowledges it clearly, but he refuses to let it define him. Modern neuroscience tells us that stress activates fight or flight responses. Your body prepares for battle or escape, and gossip feels like a social threat. Your belonging is at risk. That's why it hurts so deeply. We are wired for community. But Scripture offers a third pathway, refuge. Instead of fighting everyone or fleeing emotionally, you anchor yourself in someone. Let me give you a real example. A Christian business owner I know was accused online of unethical behaviour. A competitor twisted information, and within days, negative comments flooded social media. His first instinct was to respond to every accusation, draft long explanations, post screenshots, clear his name immediately. He barely slept. He refreshed the page constantly. Then an older mentor told him, make one clear statement of truth, then step back. Let your consistent character speak over time. That was not weakness. That was anchored confidence. He released a measured response, avoided emotional arguments, and focused on serving clients with excellence. Months later, many of the loudest critics had moved on. His credibility stood because it had roots deeper than one news cycle. That is Psalm 71 lived out. Now here's a common misunderstanding. Some people think silence equals weakness. If I don't defend myself aggressively, people will assume I'm guilty. But look closely at the psalm. The writer does speak. He declares God's righteousness. He testifies. He proclaims. What he does not do is let his enemies set his emotional agenda. There is a difference between wise response and reactive defense. Pressure reveals what story you believe about yourself. If your identity rests in public approval, gossip will devastate you. But if your identity rests in covenant relationship with God, gossip will shake you, but not shatter you. And notice the age perspective in Psalm 71. Even when I am old and grey. This is long-term thinking. When you're young, every criticism feels final. When you mature, you realize most storms pass. The psalmist's concern was legacy, not momentary vindication. He wanted to declare God's strength to the next generation. What if pressure is not just an attack? What if it is also a refinement? God does not author sin or slander, but he can use opposition to purify our dependence. Sometimes the very thing that threatens your reputation strengthens your refuge. If you run to panic, you grow defensive. If you run to God, you grow resilient. Peace does not mean you feel nothing. It means you are anchored to someone steady while you feel everything. And here is the deeper spiritual reality. The enemy of your soul would love for gossip to distract you from your calling. If he can keep you obsessed with defending yourself, he can keep you from declaring God's faithfulness. Psalm 71 calls you higher. It calls you to say, "They may speak, but I will hope. They may accuse, but I will praise. They may question God's presence, but I will lean on him continually." That is not denial. That is disciplined faith. And disciplined faith produces something extraordinary. A peace that cannot be manufactured by perfect circumstances, but is formed through practiced trust. 5 concrete steps to live Psalm 71. Now let's bring this into your real life. Not theory, not inspiration that fades by tomorrow morning, but practice. Because panic reacts instantly to pressure, but practiced faith responds deliberately with refuge. If Psalm 71 teaches us anything, it's this. Peace is cultivated, it is not automatic. Step 1. Name the pressure before God. The psalmist says plainly, "My enemies speak concerning me." He doesn't sanitize it, he doesn't minimize it, he brings it into the light of prayer. So here is something concrete you can do. Write down exactly what is being said, or what you fear is being said. Put the accusation into words. Then pray Psalm 71 aloud and insert your situation into the text. For example, "Lord, in you I take refuge. People are questioning my integrity at work. Be my rock of refuge." There is power in naming the pressure before God. When you keep it swirling in your mind, it grows. When you place it into prayer, it shrinks to its actual size. Naming pain reduces its power because it relocates it from imagination to intercession. Step 2. Rehearse your from youth until now timeline. The psalmist says, "Upon you I have leaned from before my birth. O God, from my youth you have taught me." He builds present trust on past faithfulness. Take a sheet of paper and divide it into seasons of your life: childhood, early adulthood, recent years. Write down at least 5 specific moments where God carried you through something hard. Not vague blessings, specific rescues. Maybe it was provision when you had no money. Maybe it was healing in your family. Maybe it was guidance when you faced a major decision. Pressure makes us forgetful. Memory strengthens faith. When your mind says, "This is the end," your testimony says, "He has brought me through before." Step 3. Limit reaction windows. One of the wisest practical habits you can develop is this: delay your public response. When emotions are high, clarity is low. If possible, wait 24 hours before sending that email, posting that response, or confronting that person. In that space, seek counsel from one spiritually mature believer. Not 10 friends who will inflame your frustration, but one wise voice who values truth over drama. James reminds us to be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. That is not weakness. That is spiritual strength under control. Psalm 71 shows us that the first speech should be directed toward God, not toward the critics. Step 4. Redirect energy into praise. The psalmist declares, "I will hope continually and will praise you yet more and more." Notice the defiance in that. Not denial, but defiance against despair. When anxiety spikes, your body wants to replay the accusation. Instead, create a habit of replacing that mental replay with spoken praise. Play worship music intentionally. Memorize Psalm 71:14, "But I will hope continually." Say it aloud when your thoughts spiral. Praise interrupts panic. It feels unnatural at first. But over time, it rewires your emotional reflex. Instead of rehearsing worst-case scenarios, you rehearse God's character. Step 5. Think legacy, not moment. Toward the end of the psalm, the writer says he wants to proclaim God's might to another generation. That perspective changes everything. Ask yourself this question: How will this situation look in 10 years? Most gossip has a short lifespan, but your response to it shapes your character long term. Serve faithfully even while misunderstood. Show up with integrity. Continue doing good. There is something profoundly powerful about a believer who remains steady when pressured. People notice that. It becomes a testimony. Peace grows through repetition. These practices are not one-time solutions. They are rhythms. The more consistently you choose refuge over reaction, the more natural peace becomes. You may not control the whispers, but you can control where your heart stands during them. The transformation from defensive living to declarative faith. Let's step back and see the bigger picture. The world teaches us to guard our reputation at all costs. Psalm 71 teaches us to guard our refuge at all costs. There is a difference. Defensive living is exhausting. You constantly scan for threats. You analyze every tone of voice. You measure every word. Your peace rises and falls with public opinion. Declarative faith is different. It says, "In you, O Lord, I take refuge." It anchors before it reacts. The psalmist eventually declares, "You will increase my greatness and comfort me again." Notice the confidence there. Restoration is God's work. Sometimes God allows whispers to refine our witness, not because he delights in your discomfort, but because endurance produces depth. When you refuse to retaliate and instead remain faithful, your faith matures. And let me speak directly to you if you feel isolated right now. If people have misunderstood you, if your motives have been questioned, if you feel like defending yourself has become a full-time job, you're not alone in that experience, and more importantly, you are not without refuge. Psalm 71 is not the prayer of a perfect man. It is the prayer of a pressured man who chose presence over panic. Your story is not ultimately written by critics. It is written by covenant. God sees what others distort. God knows what others speculate about. God defends in ways you cannot orchestrate. Peace does not mean everyone will understand you. Peace means you are steady even if they don't. Imagine becoming the kind of believer who walks into tense rooms and carries calm instead of anxiety. The kind of person whose security is not shaken by every rumor. The kind of disciple who can say, with quiet confidence, "They may speak, but I will hope." That transformation is possible. It begins with a simple declaration. Lord, you are my refuge. Say it when pressure rises. Say it when whispers circulate. Say it when your heart races at night. In you, O Lord, I take refuge. And when refuge becomes your first instinct, peace will no longer be rare. It will become your steady companion, even amid pressure and gossip.